Hello everyone, welcome to Chess Visor. In today's video, I am going to show you the game played between Arjun Erigaisi and Vidit Santhosh Gujrathi. It was from the World Rapid Championship round number 11. Without much delay, let's get started. With the white pieces, Arjun starts the game with a 1 e4. Vidit goes e5 and then knight f3, knight c6, pawn to d4, the Scotch game. After e takes d4, knight takes d4 and then bishop to c5 threatening the knight. So bishop e3 guarding the knight. Queen f6 adding even more pressure. So pawn c3, the main move or the main lane of the Scotch or the classical move. So knight g e7 preparing to play the move pawn to d5 getting trying to neutralize the game. So you will have to play something like bishop to c4. That was the main move or the classical move again. So in the game he plays the other variation that is called Paulsen attack. So bishop to b5. That move also indirectly stops the pawn b5 advance. So he goes bishop to b6 putting the bishop in a safe square. And then both play castle a4 and then we have queen g6 threatening the undefended pawn, and then Arjun puts the bishop back to defend the pawn. And here Vidit puts the knight in the center of the board and attacks the bishop, and in this position instead of retreating the bishop back to the c2 square, which is very natural because you keep the bishop on the same diagonal as the queen. But in the game what happened, he played a5 trying to do the counter attack. So the bishop was forced to capture the knight, and then after c takes d4, it looks like Arjun has formed the huge center because of this counter attack, but it is actually not, because after it takes on d3, your queen is going to recapture, but the problem is the queen is undefended, so he can take advantage of that by playing pawn to d5. So you cannot take with the pawn as the pawn is pinned against the queen. So he goes f3 to defend the same square. So a6 and then knight comes into the play. The rooks are connected, and it was 15th move. Both players connect the rook, and here Vidit put the bishop into the game on bishop e6. So bishop f4 threatening c7, and then rook goes to a c8 and then queen e3. So the problem is after rook f8 he x-rays the queen. The queen was okay, the queen was on another x-ray, sorry about that, because the queen was there. The queen was actually attacking indirectly, so that's why he puts the queen on e3. But now the problem is the other rook comes into the play on e5, and now that rook is x-rays the queen. So you have to move the queen again. That's what the masters does usually. But in this game Arjun did not move the queen away and ran into some trouble. So he plays knight to a4. That was a mistake in the game, and how it's a mistake, and here Vidit will demonstrate that. So d takes e4, f takes e4. It looks great. You have a dual pawn in the center. What is the problem? The problem is after bishop c4, he gets one piece out of the x-ray, and now he gains the time. And again, interestingly, Arjun puts the rook on e5. That's the problem is if you are intimidated to play this move, rook fc1, attacking the undefended bishop. The problem is he will play this brilliant move that was actually played in the game in a different variation. So knight to d5, queen g3. In the end of the variation, you will have to give up a pawn in this position. So in the game, so that's why he wanted to add one more attacker to or defender to the e4 square, but still we did play this brilliant move, knight to d5, taking advantage of the fact that the pawn is pinned against the queen. So queen goes to f3 and then knight b4, looking at the holes in the white's camp and looking for a forks. So queen c3 covers the forks for the time, but the problem is he's going to lose a pawn here in this position, but not right away, because the knight as well as the bishop is undefended. Both are undefended. How he is going to manage? Let's see. Knight to d3 lands in a fork. So queen takes c4. He takes the bishop. And after all the transaction, he plays pawn to g3, kicking the knight away. And the knight is not going anywhere. Rather, it is coming deeper or into the camp. Knight h3 check. After king g2, he plays knight to g5, threatening to win the pawn here. And after knight c3, there is no defense for the pawn. So he simply takes the pawn. So after knight takes e4, knight to d5. So here after knight to d5, he plays c6, kicking the knight, and then the knight goes to f4. And after f4, the queen is under attack, so queen moves away. So queen to f5, and then here he plays queen to d3, which is again kind of a mistake or a blunder here, because the queen is again in a square where it can be undefended. For the time the knight is defended, but there is a huge tactics in the way. If you want to find the tactics, pause the video and try to find it. And I think Vidit found this brilliant combination on the board, and like in the next three moves it forced Arjun to resign the game. In the game, what happened? The knight is guarding the queen, so he threatens the knight by playing pawn to g5. The knight is forced to go away. After knight h5, he give this check. That is the problem on f2 square, so queen f2 check, and king goes to the only square, that is h1. If you go to the h3 square, probably you're gonna get checkmated, so you don't want to do that, right? But in the game, he goes king h1, thinks that it is a safe square for the king, but the problem is, I think you found it, the brilliant queen sacrifice, which was queen takes e1 check. In this position, Arjun Erigaisi simply resigned the game. Why he has to resign? It's because he'll be like a whole rook down after you take. Let me put it on the board. So rook takes, and then you come with this move, knight f2 check. Getting the queen back, and then king to g2, and then knight takes d3. Now you are a whole rook up, so that's why you resign the game. So I hope you enjoyed this quick analysis of the game played between two compatriots of India. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and still, if you're not subscribed to my channel, consider subscribing to the channel. As usual, this is Chess Wiser, your wise choice to improve your chess.